Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Certified Forgotten. We are your horror podcast. A lot of times, I feel like I need to soften this intro a little bit because we've been doing a bit more of the uncertified approach. A lot of the time, historically, nominally, by reputation, we talk about horror films with 10 or fewer reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. But there is a lot of really, really good first release horror movies coming out this year. And I know that myself and Matt Donato, my partner in crime, want to talk about it. So we're kind of on a bit of an uncertified streak, which means we're having conversations, just the two of us, about new releases. We'll get back to it. We're definitely, Donato, we're definitely going to have a kick-ass guest and a kick-ass movie soon. But just we need to get through the Hokum and the Mummy and all this other stuff. It's a really good April and a really good May.
And like I said, I owned up to it last week. I mean, this is a lot on me for being super busy, like festival season, then just gallivanting around Europe and having a grand old time.
Gallivanting is the word.
Listen, we got to take time for life sometimes, and sometimes that takes longer than we expect. And I am now home for the foreseeable future, and that means I can go harass people to be guests on our podcast again. And I have some ideas. I have some people who I've recently started talking to that I think would be great guests. So it'll happen. I promise. We're gonna get back into the routine, and then I'm sure fall back out of it, and then get back into it and fall back out of it again. But as long as we're being consistent, that's what I'm happy with. And I very much appreciate you going on vacation, going international, coming back last night, and then being game to talk about The Mummy today, because I saw your post last night. So for what, did you land and then go right to the movie theater to see The Mummy?
I did. I landed. I dropped my stuff off at my house, and then I immediately walked down the hill and saw like a 3:20 matinee of The Mummy, because I had been, you know me. I love Lee Cronin. The reviews weren't great, and I kind of had been dancing around this one for a little bit. But I figured I just got back from international travel. I absolutely need to stay awake until a reasonable hour, which ended up being 9 p.m. Yeah, whatever, it's fine. And so I thought, I'm going to go see a movie. I'm going to go see the most gruesome and violent movie I can think of. And in that regard, my thinking was flawless. It was a perfect film to watch coming off an airplane, because you don't fall asleep. Not a lot of slow, quiet moments in this one. But should I do the for those that haven't seen it? Should I do the whole preamble and the pre-roll? Okay, cool. Let me read my little pre-written bit about The Mummy. Life's pretty good for television journalist Charlie Kiernan. Not only does he have 2 beautiful kids, with a third on the way, he's also just been offered a morning gig in New York City, allowing his family to move home from Egypt. But in their final days abroad, the unthinkable happens. Charlie's daughter Katie is taken. Fast forward 8 years, and Charlie and wife Larissa have relocated their kids to her mother's house, doing their best to move on from a tragic loss. That is, until they get a phone call that says Katie has been found. The Mummy, or as it appears on screen, the Lee Cronin's Mummy, may be Evil Dead meets Egypt, but is it worth your time? Let's discuss. Donato, I read your Daily Dead review, and I disagree with you, but I also don't, because that's usually where we land. Summarize, though, for those that haven't had a chance to read your Daily Dead review, summarize what you wrote in there, where you landed.
The very quick summary is, if I order a steak and you bring me orange chicken, it might be great orange chicken, but that's not what I ordered and not what I wanted. And I do want to say, like, I don't dislike The Mummy solely because Lee Cronin wanted to make another Evil Dead movie and for some reason bailed on making the next Evil Dead movie, or whatever happened. They couldn't come to terms. So he came to Blumhouse and he's like, I'll make a Mummy movie. But like, no, you didn't. You really did just make another Evil Dead movie. But by titling it The Mummy, you have set everyone up with an expectation that you had no desire to meet. And you can't ignore that completely. So like, for me, the expectation was of a certain horror tradition, and you went the complete opposite way. But if it's done well, that doesn't matter. Like, ultimately for me, at the end of the day, if the quality is good, that's the important part. Okay, so you threw me a curveball. I can handle that. I still enjoyed it. What happens for me, though, is this movie is dressed up in Evil Dead cosplay. And there are these little moments, I shouldn't say little, but like there are big moments that try to make it a Mummy movie, but it doesn't want it to be any kind of Mummy movie you've ever seen before. And by doing that, I think it actually betrays the nature of the film it's trying to make. And by leaning so heavily into, I'm sorry to say Evil Dead yet again. We're going to keep saying it on this podcast episode, but like the violence is torn right out of Cronin's Evil Dead Burn. Like this, sorry, not Burn. That's the new one coming out. Evil Dead Rise.
Right.
And the comparisons are too 1-to-1. Like it's not even like it's being cute about it. Like this is just a fucking Evil Dead movie. And I don't think it goes together with the emotional like family story he's trying to tell. And not only that, the editing is kind of all over the place. The movie doesn't know how to deal with like, let's go back to Cairo, let's go back to Albuquerque, Cairo, Albuquerque. Like
Right.
it doesn't do a good job setting those two places apart.
California, slightly differently staged California, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Correct. If we want to be honest about it. But at the end of the day, like there are certain elements that like don't feel like they go as hard as they should. There's a great set piece in a wake that I think is overpromised, underdelivered. There are other elements where you're just standing there going like, why is this movie even happening? How are these parents not on the same page? How like there are just so many things where I'm sitting there watching going, I can't be on board with everything that's happening. And ultimately the final sin is this movie being 2 hours and fucking 15 minutes of sloppiness. It's too much to try to handle what's going on. And Cronin lets both stories that are being told, the true crime thriller and the possession thriller, they never come together for me. So that's where I don't like it, where I'll keep ranting about the Evil Dead part, but ultimately that's not the killer. The killer
Yeah.
here is the actual execution. So I don't want to say just like, oh, it's bad because it did this. No, it's bad for technical reasons. I'm just still going to point out the Evil Dead part as much as I can.
Yeah, I will give you I'll give you my agreement there. The Evil Dead stuff is not the only thing that anybody should talk about. I do think that there is. I went into this movie. I joked about it earlier about like, oh, I wanted to see something violent that would keep me up, but like I was not looking forward to this. I think I made fun of this film on multiple podcasts just because it seemed like such a departure from what is a rich and culturally specific concept, the idea of the mummy, which is the history of Universal Studios, but it's 2026 now. And so you're like, you've got a ton that you can do with it and the way that legends and lore pass between cultures. It seemed pretty obviously from the marketing material to be an Evil Dead ripoff or an Evil Dead homage or whatever you want to call it. So I went into that thinking, I'm not sure this is going to be what I want it to be. And then I did go directly from the airport to the movie theater. And sometimes if I'm tired in a movie, it doesn't matter. I've seen festival films where I've been tired and I know that I can't give that movie a fair shake until I see it under different circumstances because I'm just too fatigued to give a shit. So all of that, like the deck was fully stacked against this film for me. The only thing operating in its favor is the fact that I really, really like Lee Cronin, as you know. And so I was like, I want to give this guy a shot. And I can't argue with anything that you said about kind of the film being back and forth and it being a little shoddily edited. My biggest defense of why I really ended up liking this is because I really enjoyed Evil Dead Rise, much to the surprise of both of us. We have a podcast episode on that, I believe. And what I was not expecting with this film is I was like, oh, he's doing Evil Dead again. The thing that stood out to me is this is the film where Lee Cronin basically says, I want to be the next Sam Raimi. And by I want to be the next Sam Raimi, I mean I wanted to use a shit ton of split diopter shots. I want to do like whip pans. I want to do like hair blown back creature effects. Like I want to have, all of the things that Sam Raimi does as a director, not just in the Evil Dead movies, but sort of the visual language that he uses. I described when I was talking about this movie in regards to Lee Cronin, the buoyancy. And I think of Sam Raimi as an incredibly buoyant and high energy director, even when he's being gross. That I think is what I responded to the most with this is Lee Cronin saying, I want to be Sam Raimi. And I want to be Sam Raimi not just in Evil Dead, but I want to be Sam Raimi in The Quick and the Dead. I want to be Sam Raimi in A Simple Plan, which is probably his parallel to, Hole in the Ground. I want to make stuff that is incredibly graphic and super high energy and not mean for the sake of mean and have it just be sort of as fun as it can be. And I found myself so much in the mode of, oh, he's just trying to be Sam Raimi and it's working for me, that the other stuff about the film, which I agree and I share, I think those are very valid concerns about not only the structure, but the storytelling. I don't know. It just stopped mattering to me. It did a lot of, had a lot of double backs and detours that I thought in a different circumstance could be real annoying, but then they would have like a super fucked up set piece and it would be incredibly silly. And the most important thing that this movie has going for it is all the child actors are fucking incredible, which is the most make or break thing for a movie like this. I was fine the whole time. I got into the groove, and I am as surprised as everybody else. Like you mentioned, Meg Navarro texted you. Like Amelia messaged me on Instagram to be like, I don't understand you, right? Like people have reached out to be like, I don't get you and I don't understand and I can't predict you. This movie works for me.
I will 100% agree with you on the child actors because I like off the bat Natalie Grace as Katie, the mummified entity, whatever we want to call her in this movie, the possessed soul of the demon. Because again, this is a possession movie. It's
Correct.
not really a. Anyway, I'm gonna not belabor that the entire time. But
Yes.
Also Billy Roy as Maud, the youngest daughter. I think specifically those two do a tremendous job because they are in the Evil Dead comparison, they are the ones that are being controlled most by the Deadites and who we lose earliest, longest, and they get to have fun with the villainy. I mean, there's a great scene where it goes right back to Evil Dead Rise. Holy shit, I can't stop. But like, there's another door scene where there are two people on sides of a door, and you're waiting for like the mommies with the maggots moment, but instead, just this huge, comically disgusting tongue comes from under the door and starts licking toes, and you're like, okay, this is fun. Like, that's good. I think correct what you said about Cronin in that he wants to be the next Sam Raimi, and that buoyancy and that lightness, and like that is such a disgusting, repulsive moment, but it has nothing to do with gore. It has nothing to do with that. Like,
right.
It is a cartoonish level of repugnance, and it being such a visual gag, it felt so Sam Raimi. But there are just other things in this movie that I try to think of something like Drag Me to Hell that is playing with curses and all these things, and the goat scene in there, and trying to compare that to what, Cronin's doing here. And there's still a little bit missing for me. It's still a little bit too into the schmaltzy and sentimental, where I can believe the extreme horror scenarios are still happening. Or maybe the contrast, let's say, is not as well executed, I would say. Cronin's trying to tell a really like deep familial story here, but then when it comes down to it, it's just about some gore here and there, some gross stuff, and I don't think that ever marries into something wholesome that I was rooting for. I think the ending specifically, trying to end on that glimmer of hope, or that happy ending in a otherwise perversely dark film, feels so out of place and so tacked on, like to the point where I almost would question if that's a studio edit. I don't know such things, but like watching the movie, where that movie ends feels very much like a studio note of, all right, you've had your fun being a fucking dark piece of shit, you gotta end on something happy. Because it doesn't work for me. Like, that ending specifically makes no sense to the scenario that's happening, and it just keeps the movie going in a way that I'm like, oh, you really didn't know how to stick this landing, so we're just gonna lifetime our way out of here.
Well, I like the fact that, let's do spoilers early. Spoiler alert early. I like the fact that the body count in this is insanely low, which I think is sort of an underrated. It does all of this, right? Like, it has the toenail scene and all this other excruciating gore that we see. But I mean, how many people die over the course of the film? One that we see. One person dies, the grandma, and that's it. I saw this yesterday.
I guess the beginning, the hook through
the beginning.
I assume
whatever.
said man did not survive a hook through the jaw.
We only see masks later. He might have. So the idea here, I think, is that it's one of the things that I love about The Hole in the Ground, which is, again, I think is on. Somebody asked me how I felt about it on social the other day, and I said I think it's in my top 10 of horror. I think it's very fluid. It probably would change depending on the day, but Cronin plays with the structure of modern day horror, like trauma horror, and is like, nope, it's actually a monster. So, spoiler alerts for The Hole in the Ground, I guess, if you're listening to this episode. It is a changeling story. It's an Irish folklore changeling story. And for most of the film, you're meant to think, oh, is she having a mental breakdown? And at the end of the movie, it's like, nope, her kid actually was fucking replaced by a clay monstrosity by a bunch of fairies. That's the film, which is great. That's Irish folklore. He's leaning into it, not away from it. I love it. But it also sort of creates the scenario where it's not, the film is not bartering in this serious familial, emotional stakes. It's okay that sometimes it's just a creature feature. And I think I took a lot of inspiration in The Mummy, or the Lee Cronin's Mummy, because the graphic is just insane, uh, from Jack Reynor, actually, who Jack Reynor, the best performance in the film for me is, and I did not look up how to pronounce her last name beforehand. I should have. I apologize. May Calamawy, I think, or Calamawy. I think she's so good in this, and I hope that casting directors across Hollywood took note. But I think Jack Reynor feels very locked in a way that I harken back a little bit to Alyssa Sutherland in Evil Dead Rise. Alyssa Sutherland understood the assignment, very physical, very creepy. Jack Reynor understands the assignment, completely vacant, sort of useless, like sort of sucks as a dad. The best scene in the film, or one of the funniest scenes in the film, is where he just basically shuts down on the couch. Not because the narrative demands that he does, but because like he just kind of sucks. He's that is what happens to his character. But it is exaggerated to the point of almost cartoonishness in that moment. And there's a lot of little bits between where Jack Reynor is mugging, like flat out fucking mugging his way through this movie. And I think I just never took the family stuff as seriously as that, because Reynor is sort of, mourning at 11. All of them are kind of mourning at 11. It is a little cartoony. It is at times a little Bugs Bunny-y, which again goes back to the raminess of it all, which is why I don't think that I took it seriously in the sense of I was excited for the gore and the story. But for a film that is, I'm hard for me to articulate why a film that has the draping and the shape of such a self-serious movie, to me, I did not take it seriously for a moment. Complimentary. Like from the jump, I was like, I think when that hook went in that guy's jaw, I was like, oh, okay, it's Raimi time. And so I never, when the movie didn't do well with character resolutions, I never judged it for that, because I was like, that's not the point here. We're not doing that. It's not that kind of movie. And for me, it felt right most of the way through.
Yeah, I mean, Raynor's eyes do so much work in this movie. He's that, like you said, vacant. Like he has that wonderful stare of just being. It's like few people can display being petrified and like being
Yeah.
paralyzed in fear, and what that looks like more than just standing still. And like someone like Samara Weaving or like Jack Reynor, like they just have the facial expression to really bring that to life and make you see what it like looks like. I think he is by and large doing a lot of heavy lifting here, and being a piece of shit is part of that. Being the dad who's doing his best, but like there's selfishness and other stuff going on in there. Like can't actually communicate with his wife because he just works all day, comes home, and she's the caretaker and all this stuff. So like I get all that, and I get that's what leads to the ending. But I go back to just how this thing culminates, and like if you want me to, I guess to say like if you want me to believe that this demonic scenario is somewhat grounded, I get it. It's cartoonish. We're throwing everything away and just saying go along for the ride. Your ride's 2 hours plus, so you're already gonna need a lot to keep me in there. And then when you get to that ending, and you've built rules. There is lore with this demon. There is lore with this monster.
There is.
And it right now is trapped in a feeble child's body that you can control and you can kind of do your best with. And to have the movie end with him willingly take the demon, put it into his much stronger body with only his children and wife there to subdue him, but then all of a sudden he can just control it, and they just get him down in the basement, lock him up, and he's like communicating through it. There's no malevolence, there's no any of this. And then to smuggle him across international borders, like, I'm sorry, I get it. This is going for broke. I
I
understand
don't
it,
care.
but
I don't care about that.
you've
Yeah.
already lost some of me along the way. And then saying fuck it in that particular way, that to me is not cartoonish and having fun with it. We're not exploitation-y. Like it's just tacking on the ending you want for shit's sake. And that's to me where like the ideas of the movie are at war with itself. And every few scenes something happens that just doesn't jive with what's happened or what's going to happen. So like it's like Cronin had all these ideas, say maybe in an old Evil Dead script, and he just turned it into a Mummy movie for a new studio. Like It's to the point where
You
like,
said you weren't going to do that anymore. You said you were
I'm
done
sorry, I don't. What do you want me to fucking
complaining
do?
about it, what it wasn't. Yeah, continue.
But that is part of it, though. Again, like it's other people have masked this imitation, sincerest form of flattery. Like, of course, there's like 3, 4, 5 different types of stories a movie can tell, and it's about what you bring to it. So other people have done this well. Other people have masked their influences. Other people have even overtly made movies that are influenced on stuff and just have told a better story. And for me, it just comes down to like, I don't think Cronin ever gets away from the fact that he wants to make another Evil Dead movie derogatorily because it ruins the original story he's trying to tell.
Hmm.
I think that's where I would take it. Again, it's not because it is an Evil Dead movie. It's because he wants it to be something that it's not.
Yeah.
In a way.
I look, I understand. A lot of folks had complaints about that, and I think we often talk about how will a film be received in the future. I am curious to see how people will feel if they get a chance to look back on this in 5, 10 years, because the mumminess of it all, the context of it being, how much people liked the Invisible Man, and nobody saw Wolfman, and then this one, or at least I didn't see Wolfman. I think that it's carrying a lot of expectations and baggage just by the nature of the title. And the other thought that I had while I was in the movie theater um, is that we used to live in a society where, just period, we used to live in a society, but it was a pretty long tradition in the VHS market of like the third, fourth, fifth movies. Sometimes folks would just come in and make their movie, right? And they were like, "We're going to have you do The Exorcist," which is the one that everybody loves, Exorcist 3. Haven't seen it before. Got to see it at some point. But Exorcist 3 is widely loved, has very little to do with like the Exorcist stuff that came before, but people love it because it's got, from my understanding, we've published some good writing on it, great performances, a really couple of incredible visual ideas, etc. So I am, again, I can't explain it because everything that you're saying, like I see where you're coming from, and I don't disagree. And there's another context in which I would like it. And trust me, at the end of a 6-hour flight and 2 trips through customs, I wasn't. I am not like just so happy to be at the movie theater that I'm overlooking some of these film flaws. I went in thinking I was going to dislike it. I expected to not to dislike the film, but I don't know. There's just something about, at the end of the day, I think the way that he structures the set pieces in this, because we've talked on the podcast before about the fact that I find a lot of action movies kind of interminable because they kind of start at 11 and then stay at 11, and there's not enough variety in the fight sequences, and it's just kind of the same thing happening every 15 minutes. And I get it, but it doesn't do it for me. The way that he deals with each of the different possession or haunting or like, monster sequences in this film is so varied that it keeps that forward propulsion working for me. The crawl space stuff versus the grandmother stuff versus the funeral home stuff versus the Frightener's big ending type thing. Like all of that is different enough. There's so many different types of set pieces in here that I think that's an underrated element of the Mummy, and something that I hope people see about Cronin as a director is that he doesn't repeat himself. He's not repeating in this movie. He's not repeating jump scares. He's not repeating like different bits of bodily violence. And I think that's kind of incredible. I think that's part of the reason another reason I liked it so much is the film is just moving you from these different points, but they're all different enough from each other that you're always kind of thinking, oh, I wonder how they're going to escalate the next one. Or I wonder how they're going to do something a little bit different. And like a girl sitting at a table pulling teeth, about a loose tooth out of her head, and then pulling not loose tooth out of her head. That sounds horrific. That sounds like something that make your skin crawl. For a lot of you, it might. It's just kind of silly and fun. And I don't know. The combination of the fact that it was buoyant is the only word I can think to describe. It is a buoyant movie, and it is a varied movie. And those two things made me feel like I don't care if it's a good or bad Mummy movie, and I don't care about the ending, because by the end of the film, I was like happy, satisfied, done. Like the thing they did, the franchise tie-ins or whatever, I don't care about it one way or the other. Isn't super great, but you know what? Neither is taking the long history of Mummy movies and making it into an Evil Dead. I don't love all of this on paper. I just had a good time in the theater.
The torn leg flesh from the toenail bit
So
that
good.
gore piece, better to me than the cheese grater in Evil Dead.
Yeah.
So like I like that's a complimentary comparison. I think Cronin learned a little bit of the I don't know, like what kind of gore works, what's more fun versus what's more effective, and
And it's an incredible thing for you to be like, the horrible thing that's about to happen. No, you don't. Like everybody in the theater was waiting for that nail to come off, and he was like, not just the nail, not just the nail, buddy.
yeah. So again, that kind of imagination and that kind of thought process he's putting into the movie, like that's how I know that I like Cronin as a filmmaker overall, and that, like this is a wayward step for me in the sense of all right, if your worst movie is still The Mummy, you're doing okay. Like like that's I do think that is something
Yeah.
I'm very adamant about. But like I just go back to that wake scene, like you mentioned how much fun he's having with it, and like there is so much fun in that wake scene because you do have this small child just giggling as she tears her teeth out and is bleeding everywhere and coughs on the deviled eggs and now they're spattered in blood. And then you have you have the possessed child crawling on the ceiling and like coming out of a molded like kind of a dugout that she's made, and like that's all great. But you have a room full of people,
Yep.
a goddamn lot of people actually, and they all see something horrific, and like a priest gets his like fucking jugular bitten out almost, or like a piece of flesh ripped off, and there's just no consequence for any of it. Like we just speed right by it. It was a set piece. Don't think about it. Like again, that bothers me. Like
Yes,
sorry,
but
like
no. But here's the thing. What would be satisfying about resolving that, right? I think that's kind of to Cronin's favor is he's like, here's the scenario. Do I deal with the fallout of this? Do I deal with it? No, fuck no. Next scene. Like nothing that you can do as a filmmaker in order to keep it grounded and like resolve all the guests they have and what to deal with. I like that. I like the fact that he was like, I'm going to do this, and then I can't back out of it in a way that feels like, oh, what are the stakes? It was just like, nah, we're gonna move on. We're gonna, later that day, and we don't ever have to deal with any of this horrible stuff that just happened. I kind of admire that. I think that there's a little bit of fun in the notion of like, I'm gonna have my best set pieces, and then I'm not gonna feel the need to explain them. I'm just gonna be like, and that happened. And I think that's great. Like, I can't imagine. I was like, what is the scene? How do you do that in a way? Like, people running out, people like, talking to them at the door, being like, what is going on? Like, the cops showing up. None of that's fun. This is fun. Like, them just like 1,000 yards staring on the couch afterwards. That's fun. I like that. So I agree with what you're saying, but it worked for me this way. And I wish I knew why.
I go back to the over promising and under delivering, because that was that scene to me, because you did have all these other people. You did have so much more room for chaos to play in. And it felt like a part in the movie too, where we are going back and doing a lot of procedural stuff in Cairo. And when I do love the detective character, I'm with you on that. I think the detective character is well acted. I don't know how she got from Cairo to Albuquerque overnight. Like it's nothing. Again, insane shit. But
who cares? Who cares?
No, but that wake scene, no, I don't like it because I don't think it goes far enough for promising what it is, and to cut it off the way it cuts it off, it just feels like hacked off in a way that stunts the impact of what had happened already, which is amazing. Obviously the dead body on the ground, Abuela is everything's bad in that scene, and it's having fun with it, but like it stops itself in a weird way that doesn't go any farther, and by not addressing it, it kind of calls it out even more, because like it just kind of ends on this priest being fucking mauled.
Yeah.
And I think there's more to do there. I don't care. You're right. I don't care about the cops showing up. I don't care about those kind of consequences, but I'm just talking about immediate consequences. Like,
yes,
you kind of cut me off right at the crescendo of what could have happened. So I think, again, like that's where I think Cronin's ideas are all there, but I go back to editing. It was like a slam cut and it's just over, and you're like, the fuck? Like, hold on, what do you mean? I was just getting amped up for something more. So a lot of tonal just weirdness, a lot of pacing changes that I didn't agree with, and a scene like that is my example. Like that's my example of like cool shit, loved it. Why did it stop so soon? Doesn't really make sense in the story.
Yeah, and I guess my final word on it is just I feel, I often talk about the fact that I feel music, right? Like that action scenes and set pieces feel like movements in a symphony, which is the most pretentiously, hacky shit that I can say. But I do think there's something for timing. And I think a lot of horror filmmakers don't have great timing. They have good ideas, but they don't know how to get in and out of these things that they do. And I think Cronin has a really, really, and maybe the biggest strength he shares with Sam Raimi is he has a really good sense of timing. He knows exactly how long a scene can go on and exactly how long a scene should go on and why those two things are different and will have very different effects on their audience. So I don't know. Maybe I expected this to be the film, in much the same way that I was expecting that I would struggle with something like The Monkey with Osgood Perkins, where I didn't think it was going to be, the humor would be out of balance with the stuff that he's really good at. This was a film that surprised me in all the right ways, and I think this is more than anything the thing that solidifies me as a Lee Cronin stan. Is this movie showed off that he has a wicked sense of humor, an incredible sense of timing. Does it do a lot of things? Does it deserve the mixed reviews and the negativity that I see online from other film critics? I think absolutely. For me, it was a validation that this guy is somebody that I want to see make more movies based on the success of this or lack thereof. I don't know if but he's going to rush out to give him another franchise film. But I would love to see him. I would love to see him keep doing his Sam Raimi shtick. I think that he understands. It boils down to timing. I think he understands what makes Raimi so good as a horror filmmaker and as an entertainer. And I hope he continues to get chances to do so.
See, it's funny because my last word will be I think time is his greatest enemy in this movie. I think the running time is a detriment because it gives him too much time to throw a bunch of ideas at the wall but not explore them properly. And also, I go back to saying I don't think he knows what to do with certain scenes, and having the timing cue be off for me. Like we had like different experiences. Like basically we had the opposite experience. So like how time is the greatest weapon he has in your opinion. I think time here is what kind of sinks the Mummy.
Well, there you have it. Unexpectedly, this is not a film that I predicted that we would fall the way we would. If I would have put all of my Polymarket credits on the fact that you would have enjoyed this and I wouldn't have, just based on the trailers and kind of understanding. But I would have said the same thing probably about Evil Dead Rise, and that we both enjoyed that one. So sometimes you just think you're like a filmmaker and they reward you, and you find somebody that kind of works for you and you're on your wavelength. You gotta stick with that person until they become problematic. But walk the path of the light, Lee Cronin. You've got at least one fan in your corner all the way if you want it. That is it. That's our conversation about The Mummy. You're welcome, Meg Navarro, and anyone else who listened, because you wanted to hear our by our standards, a fairly heated, I think, episode of the podcast.
Anger.
Not that we're angry at each other, but we're both passionate about the film that we're talking about in different directions, which is kind of fun.
Rawr.
Donato, you have been a busy, busy little bee. You've done a bunch of traveling for festivals and whatnot. You continue to cover this, that, and everything else for Daily Dead. Where do folks stay connected with you online?
You can follow me, as always, at DonatoBomb, DonatoBomb, and that is mainly Blue Sky, Instagram, and yeah, that letterbox. That's pretty prominent. Recently, this week, I had two things go up on. I know you just mentioned Daily Dead, but I had two things go up on Bloody Disgusting that I'm happy about.
Hey.
I was able to sit down with the writer and director of Behind the Mask: The Rise of Leslie Vernon, as well as new co-producer Aaron Kuntz. And we talked about the announcement of the sequel, and I had 30 solid minutes just to get any information I could out of them. So I've got a big old piece on Bloody Disgusting about what you can expect from the new Leslie Vernon sequel. And I have a new remake column up. I watched both Embrace of the Vampires. It was weird. It was a horny time. I don't know. Kind of really shows you what changed in the perception of sexiness.
Yes. Though, hey, Matt Donato doing interviews again. We love to see it. That's been picking up as of late.
I did the one at Sundance for Bloody with Juan and Wenel, and like I don't like doing them all the time, but when it's something I'm passionate about, I kind of do miss doing it. So yeah, I appreciate Meg over there at Bloody Disgusting for letting me do those two so far.
Well, as for me, you can follow me just basically on Blue Sky, aka that communist left-wing monstrosity of a website that I basically just use because there's like 8 people that talk about comic books and horror movies with me. But I'm there. It's Monagle, bluesky.social. I guess you can follow me on Letterboxd as well. It's at Monagle, I think. But most importantly, you should follow Certified Forgotten. We just had a piece go up today from our good friend and consulting editor, Christine Makepeace. She wrote about Ty West's The Sacrament. It's a banger of a piece about a film that I definitely need to revisit because it's been way too long. And we've got more pieces in the hopper as well. That's the kind of film criticism you find at certifiedforgotten.com. So visit the website or visit certifiedforgotten.com/newsletter and sign up for our weekly newsletter. It's been on hiatus as I have been traveling. It's coming back this weekend. You'll get probably a dumbed down version of the argument that Donato and I just had. But as you have seen, as other publications have struggled in this past week in the news, anything and everything you can do to support sites like Certified Forgotten go a long way. Not just to help us. I'm doing our taxes right now. We didn't make any fucking money off of this. It helps our writers. It gives them a platform and it gives them a paycheck. And we want to continue to be able to do that. So support us financially, support us with your clicks. Either of those goes a long way. Donato, we don't normally have you take us home, but this is a good movie. I feel like this is one that you want to do something weird for. So I'm going to put you on the spot. Can you bring us home for the Lee Cronin's Mummy?
The Lee Cronin's Evil Dead Mummy Rise.
Beautiful.